This weekend, win on the field and at home with amazing deals on bouquets from 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for $29.99, you'll get an extra bouquet for free. How awesome is that? Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/Mike.
Here we are. Good morning. We're back in better than ever. Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. And Golick, there is a song. It was written by Barbara Cook. And it's called It's Not Where You Start, It's Where You Finish. Mm-hmm. And last night they were singing it in the Bronx. It couldn't have possibly started worse for the hometown Yankees, but all's well that ends well. The Yanks come from behind. They win the wild card. And now, big fella, they play your Indians beginning tomorrow night.
Congratulations on the win to get into the real playoffs now, Yankees, before you get ousted by my Indians, which is going to happen. But what a game last night. And it's interesting, that line. Give me that line again.
It's not where you start, it's where you finish.
See, I didn't know it was her. I thought Notre Dame had started that because in 1977 at the Cotton Bowl, when Notre Dame, my brother's team, his junior year, beat Texas and Earl Campbell and won the national championship.
Was that the chicken soup game?
No. That was the next year. In the beginning of that season, their second game, they lost against Mississippi, so a lot of people thought they were out of it. Then they ran the table all the way to beating Texas, and on the chalkboard, there was no whiteboard sign. On the chalkboard, it said, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. So I guess they stole her line as well.
Well, I Googled it because I wanted I knew there had to be some famous quote like that.
You would think so.
And it turns out it's a famous song from a movie that Shirley MacLaine sang. I don't even know, but it turns out to have been, they performed it at the Kennedy Center and all that. Okay. I figured, okay, it's a legit song.
Sure.
I'll open the show with it.
That's good. There you go.
And it obviously tells the story. So 1/3 of an inning into not even a third of an inning into last night's game, it sure looked bad for the Yankees in the Bronx.
And you obviously we talk about the team aspect is what we'll do here, but as an individual, 23 years old, Luis Severino, all of a sudden, here you go. Here's your start in the postseason. You're a hard thrower. First pitch, 100 miles an hour. Like, woo, look at that, smoke right out of the gate. I heard when I was driving to the airport, Timmy Kirkson's line about after the seventh inning, all the pitches over 100 mile an hour out of starters, more than anybody else combined for starters. And, he comes out of the gate. The stat that blew my mind the most, not that he only made it through one out, and did he have to shower actually when he hit the showers, after that, but he didn't get one Twin to swing and miss. Not one. I mean, you felt bad for him individually, and then if you're a Yankee fan, you're sitting there going, okay, I know we can score runs, but are you kidding? We got one out. We're down 3-0. And there's only one game in this thing. I was reading tweets about Major League Baseball is going to decide in the sixth inning that these series will now be best of three with the Yankees with the fear of them losing this.
Of course,
thing.
Yeah. We had a long conversation about that yesterday.
Yeah, I heard Booger's a thought about that. But, man, what a horrible start for him. But Yankees come right back, do what they do. In the bullpen, this is baseball now, isn't it? We started talking about that last year, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more today. Starters are down as far as innings their pitch. Bullpen is up, and this bullpen was out of their minds last night.
Yeah, it used to be, for the longest time it was you hoped your starter would give you 7 or 8 innings. It then worked its way to 6. It's now at 5.
Yeah.
A third of an inning, I think, is not exactly what they had counted on.
And on Minnesota side, it's not like Santana. I thought he was going to get pulled in the first as well. I was talking with Hembo before the show. We thought one more hit, and he only went 2. It's not like, he gave him 5, kind of what we're looking for now. He only gave
the game right back to the Yankees.
Exactly
right. It was exactly what happened. He sat there forever, and people will talk about how long that inning was with the pitching change in the first inning, and these starters sort of warm themselves up in a routine to be ready to walk to the mound and throw their first pitch at a particular time, and his came far later than that. But there's no excuses. He's a veteran pitcher.
Exactly right.
His team hands him a 3-0 lead. It could have been more. Look, so many. Well, let's do off the top. There's so many different ways this game gets decided.
Off the top.
Last night. Let's go off the top. Bunch of other stuff. So in one NBA preseason game last night, you had the debuts on their new teams.
How about it?
Of Chris Paul and Carmelo Anthony and Paul George. So that was actually a preseason game worth paying a little attention to last night.
And the Rockets, listen, they're just a continuation of what they're going to do. They took 55 shots from 3, and they made 24 of them. By the way, the NBA regular season record is 25. The Cavaliers did it against the Hawks in March of this past, just this past March.
Yeah.
So this is what you're going to get out of them. These guys are just going to be lofting up those threes again. Another record of threes will go. So pretty wild, though, the debuts of these two teams facing one another.
And, this is going to sound like a ridiculous analogy to make, but with regard to the NBA, like I in my lifetime of owning cars, which I'm now, I've owned, I don't even know how many, I'm 50 years old. I've had cars since I was in my early 20s. I like leasing cars for the simple reason that it's fun and exciting to get a new one every now and again. And the NBA has kind of become that.
They have.
Oklahoma say, oh, look who they are now. Houston, look who they are now.
And they are truly leasing these players.
Leasing them. Yeah. Every team in the NBA has that new car smell.
Lease it with then the option to buy, huh?
And they almost never pick up the option.
Off the top.
Elsewhere. All right, Danny Trevathan of the Bears. And, Mike, certainly you and I will set aside some time to talk about this at some length today. Booger McFarland, who was in with me yesterday, is best friends with Derek Brooks, as you know, who's the guy who did the hearing yesterday. And Booger said he was predicting that Brooks would knock the suspension down from 2 games to 1, and that's exactly what happened.
I thought so as well. I would have rather there had been no suspension. I thought there'd be a fine, but if the NFL, again, if they seriously want, and I know Danny Trevathan saying it was my momentum and the receiver's level drop. To me, all of that means nothing. It was the fact that he lowered his own head. No matter where he hit Devontae Adams, he lowered his head on this hit, and they want that out of the NFL. So there's going to be some punishment for that. I do understand that if you're truly trying to get that out of the NFL, you'll see more fines at least with that because guys are still dropping their head. But I thought this would get dropped to 1 game as well. Again, I was hoping just to suspend to the 1 game. I certainly understand.
I understand what you're saying, and it puts defensive players in a very difficult position. But at the end of the day, with where we are in the NFL right now, if you put your head down and hit a guy directly in the face mask, even if you didn't mean to, with the crown of your helmet, if you're not going to get suspended for that, what are you going to get suspended for?
I get it. Again, that was a hit that was commonplace when I was playing. The solution to this is if he just led with his shoulder, and that's what they want to teach now, your shoulder, not dropping your head, but your shoulder, we have no issues.
Off the top.
The NHL season begins tonight. All these years start earlier than they used to, and I'll tell you what it made me think of, again, as the NHL season now is back, and the hockey fans, I'm sure, are excited, is just the way the political climate in our country has changed. 10 years ago on this show, on this day, the day the hockey season started, we would do a feature called Right Winger or Right Winger.
Yes, we would.
And we would read the name of some nondescript name, and you would have to guess whether it was an NHL right wing or a Republican member of the House of Representatives.
Right.
And it was funny, and everybody laughed.
Yep.
Could you imagine doing that now?
No.
I mean, it would just be it would be as though we had made some significant political statement, and people would be threatening to boycott the show.
Yeah, we'd be on other stations, being talked about on news stations here. But here, listen, you got the Penguins looking to become the first NHL team to go 3 straight Stanley Cups since the Islanders won 4 in a row. From 80 to 83, you got the young star in Connor McDavid, won a bunch of awards, including the big one, the Hart Trophy. He turns 21 in January.
Wow.
If he wins it again, he'll join Wayne Gretzky as the second player in NHL history to win multiple Hart Trophies before his 22nd birthday. And also, the Vegas Golden Knights start as well. Now, they don't have a home game in Vegas until October 10th, but they get going as well. So, again, I say, in these suites in Vegas, you got to put some blackjack tables.
First, or at least slot machines. Yeah. First, time we'll see professional sports in that city. Obviously, in Las Vegas right now, they're dealing with so much
yes, they are.
Other stuff, but hopefully it'll bring, some excitement or happiness or whatever the word I'm looking for is.
From the sports side, we'll be interested to see how that goes. Again, a lot of games as opposed to if the Raiders, when they end up there, you're talking about 8 home games, you're talking about 41 here.
Off the top.
All right, back to baseball. The National League Wild Card game is tonight. It will be the Rockies and the Diamondbacks, 2 teams that know each other extraordinarily well as division rivals meet in the wild card game.
Yeah, Rockies not scoring a lot of runs. They've averaged just about 3.5 runs per game against the Diamondbacks. They're fewest against any National League team. What they do have, though, is John Gray, who's on the mound. He allowed 3 runs or fewer in each of his last 13 starts. And Greinke, on the other side of it, in his last 2 starts, he gave up 10 earned runs in 8 innings pitched. So, but Greinke has had has been For the most part, we know a great
he's a great pitcher.
He is, yeah.
He's supposed to get that job done tonight. This is why you pay a guy like Zach Greinke the money that he gets paid is to win this game, is to go out there and last more than 1/3 of an inning.
Off the top.
And that brings us back to where we began. Let's make that Off the Top, presented by Progressive Insurance. More independent agents sell Progressive Insurance than any other brand. Find an agent at Progressive.com. Now that's Progressive. And that brings us back to Luis Severino. You mentioned it, Mike. He's the 17th pitcher in baseball's postseason history to throw 1/3 innings or fewer and allow 3 earned runs or more. Of the previous 16, only once had the team come from behind to win that game. So if you think about it, in the whole history of the sport, last night you saw something that had only happened once, and it was in 1925. Vic Arledge of the Pirates allowed 4 runs in 1/3 of an inning in Game 7 of the 1925 World Series, but his teammates picked him up and beat the Senators 9-7. That was 1925. It's the last time a starting pitcher in any postseason game gave up 3 earned runs in the first 1/3 of an inning, and his team came back to win.
I mean, I thought Aaron Boone said it best on the broadcast. He never looked comfortable. Never looked comfortable out there. Never found his niche in that game at all. Looked horrible. Then it was the offices of Green, Robertson, Canely, and Chapman that came in and just absolutely, it reminded me of one of those attorney commercials.
Yeah.
These guys come out and talk like tough guys. We're going to take care of this for you. I could just imagine the 4 of them, throwing the ball and catching the ball and saying that, we're going to shut you down.
Pretty good, actually.
Yeah, 13 strikeouts. I mean, just incredible what they had to do. I heard you guys talking again on my way to the airport about just how long Severino, may go in this one, that he could get the quicker hook. How quick would the hook come, depending on situations? All that thrown out the window. You never saw it in the first inning. I mean, you never saw this possibly going to happen in the first inning. And then your leadoff hitter and Dozier goes yard, and it all just completely fell apart from there.
For him, it most certainly did.
Yeah.
And the Yankees come from behind to pick him up and get the win. And here is last night's game was a perfect microcosm of what the game of baseball is right now. There were 12 runs scored in the game. 9 of them came based on home runs, via the home run.
Yep.
250 out of the 343 pitches were thrown by relievers. Someone do the math on that. What percentage is that? I mean, this is obviously disproportionately high because one starter went 1/3 of an inning and the other went 2 innings. So it's not usually going to be quite that high. That's an insanely high.
We said now the average is 5 innings now for these starters.
Yeah, so this is obviously way less than that. So he's doing I can actually see him typing it up on my screen. So that is 73% of the pitches last night were thrown by relievers. There were 18 hits in the game. There were 18 strikeouts in the game, and it lasted 3 hours and 51 minutes.
Most of that the first inning.
That's me, exactly. Yeah, the first inning lasted 2 hours and 51 minutes. The rest of the game went by comparatively quickly. And so the Yankees in the end come from all the way behind to get the win. And as you were saying, Aaron Boone, who did the game, was talking at great length about the way it all turned in that first inning.
Chad Green coming on in the first and putting out the fire with 2 big strikeouts kind of electrified this crowd again and got the crowd into it. And then Brett Gardner's at bat to lead off the first inning to kind of set the tone. And I think right out off the bat, Irvin Santana with the pitching change had a long delay before he threw his first pitch, and from Jump Street, he did not have his slider, and you could tell the Yankees knew it, and they were able to wait him out, put some couple of big swings on it, and take over the game.
I mean, it was. So I keep going back to Severino, and you're gonna need him more, obviously, right?
As the postseason goes on.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
If it goes
He's
on.
their best pitcher.
So we always talk about the mental state of a quarterback, of a starting pitcher, these guys when they get in bad situations, how they're going to react. Kid's 23 years old. I mean, I guess you have no idea, how you don't have a lot of sampling, for years and years of experience to know how he may handle the situation. But, what the Yankees do have is bats. The top 4 order of Gardner, Judge, Sanchez, and Gregorius, who hit the shot in the first inning. They went, 7 of 15. They scored 8 runs at 6 RBI. So, I mean, they carried this team, and they have the ability to do that with the long ball, as we know. But, man, that was a shaky start for the Yankees. But you're talking about the first inning, you even it up, and then you know what to do is you take that. It's like going down 10-0, 14-0 in a football game. I was trying to make a comparison of score, where you needed a couple of scores to get back into it, but you get it early enough where you're like, oh my God, a couple of series and we're down, and then the game settles in and you tie the score back up. And what you do on the sideline is you take that big sigh of relief. You say, okay, 0-0 game. You try and use that line all the time, even if you're winning big, and I'm talking about football now, you're winning big or you're losing big, you go in the locker room and you're like, okay, it's 0-0. Let's play it that way. But when it truly is back to basically 0-0, man, there's a huge sigh of relief. So first inning, they tie it back up. You're back to square one.
And that's why, listen, I'm not going to sit here and crush people because obviously the Yankee pitcher didn't do his job. But Irvin Santana, that's his game.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
You're playing against a team that has basically no postseason experience. I know they're wearing the interlocking NY of the New York Yankees, but Babe Ruth isn't standing out there on that field. You're playing a team that has basically no playoff experience. You get staked to a 3-0 lead in the first inning. Your job is to keep that score in that place that makes that stadium tight.
Right.
Because that your players feed on that. You can feel that energy in a ballpark, especially like that one where in the first inning the place is silent. I heard your son Mike describe it as being like the Family Feud clap, where you give a really terrible answer and your family is like,
anyway.
Oh, good job. That has a chance to be up there. Name a country in South America. Australia. Oh, good answer.
Right, yeah.
Good. No, it's a terrible answer. And that's what the building is going to be like. And so when you give that, if that game is 3-0 in the fourth inning, it is a totally different feel. But he gives it back to them immediately, and then it's all she wrote. And the Yankees go to their bullpen, and the next thing you know, you've got enormous amounts of momentum going.
Yeah.
The Yankees bring in one after another after another reliever who throw 120 miles an hour, and that's the end of the ball
when Green
game.
came in and just shut him down, I mean, just drink. You want to talk about a quick reversal. Then they obviously had to get the runs after that to get it back in, but he comes in and strikes those the last two outs. Robertson throws a career high of pitches and innings in this thing. I mean, you have to do what's not expected of you in certain situations. It just happened to be in the first postseason game this year.
Well, look, nobody goes into a game and says, all right, we're going to get 26 outs from our bullpen tonight. So what impact does that have on them going forward? Look, this is the beauty, if you will, of the wild card scenario as it is currently structured, which is winning the division is supposed to be a big advantage. The Indians now have a big advantage against the Yankees. Who I was about to say they had to burn their ace. It's sort of hard to say that when he threw 1/3 of an inning.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if and when I went to sleep right as that game ended last night, if and when, how they're going to use him going forward and how short his stint was last night will impact that. I don't know how you feel about putting him back out there, but clearly they're not going anywhere if he doesn't pitch better than that. So you'll go back to him, and we'll see what winds up happening. But in the end, what else do I have here? I have Kirchin on the Yankee bullpen, which, again, last night is clearly the story of the evening.
This performance by this bullpen takes me back to what Lance Berkman told me years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. He said, every night somebody comes out of the bullpen throwing 95 miles an hour, and I've never even heard of him. And that's the way the game works today. And, Scott, that's especially how the game works in October. We saw it last year. The Cubs won the World Series in part for the way they used their bullpen. The Indians got to the World Series with the way they used Andrew Miller. And now in the first postseason game of the season, the way the Yankees used their bullpen and the power arms they had out there got them to the next round.
Again, 13 strikeouts, tied for the most all-time by a team's bullpen, 9-inning postseason game, 2015 Cubs against the Cardinals, 85 Cardinals against the Royals. So, I mean, just what a great job of coming in and just shutting it down the way they did. So on they go, to the Indians. I have my fun with that. The Indians, they played 7 games. Indians won 5 of them this year. Indians are favored. They're going in like the Cubs were in last year's postseason. That's the Indians this year. So that's the expectation. Kluber not going in game 1 of this series. But, I obviously, who I'm rooting for in this one, the Indians. So we'll see how it goes.
It'll be fun to watch. Listen, the Twins had an unbelievable year.
Yeah, they did.
Give them a lot of credit. Yep. They lost 103 games a year ago. They were under 500 at the beginning of August of this year. They rallied. They made a great run. They had a good chance last night. You score 3 runs in the first inning, and the other team starter is out of the game 1/3 of an inning into it. You're supposed to win that game.
You are.
And they didn't get it done.
And I know you guys were talking about this wild card matchup. up to not be just one game. I'm not going to lie. Booger's idea grew on me.
About making the road team win
Minnesota.
one more.
Minnesota would have had to win 2 games. Yankees won the one. It would be over. Minnesota, if they won last night, would have to play one more. I know it backs everything up another day. I get that. But
It could back everything up. It doesn't have to back everything up, as we discussed.
Depends on the advantage you still want to give.
You could do both of them. You could start both. You could do both the AL and NL on Tuesday.
Right.
And then, if need be, you have them both on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And you start the other series
Thursday,
on Friday, which one of the team is anyway.
Right.
The winner of tonight's game is not playing till Friday.
Right.
So you could start it that way. I mean, if you have to wind up having to break ties, it goes in there one way or the other. We can talk about it. Either way, Mike, we have to do player with style here. It's brought to you by JCPenney. And, guys, you should get to JCPenney today for Levi's lowest prices of the season, like 505 regular fit and 501 original fit for $36.99 each. That's getting your pennies worth at JCPenney. And for the player with style, I will say there are a lot of people out there who will be wearing those jeans with an Aaron Judge jersey. Mm-hmm. Did you see the numbers that came in? Aaron Judge's jersey was the highest-selling rookie jersey in Major League Baseball history.
Really?
Sold more jerseys than any other rookie in the history of the game. It was the highest-selling jersey in the sport this year. The order of the top 5 selling jerseys in baseball this year were in the reverse order. Number 5, Bryce Harper. Number 4, Clayton Kershaw. Number 3, Anthony Rizzo. Number 2, Chris Bryant. And number 1, Aaron Judge. Notably, Mike Trout was 8th. Now, he was hurt some of the year, but
right,
even so. And he's been around longer than most of those guys on the list also. Well, not about the same as Harper, I guess, and not as long as Kershaw. Either way, Judge was the number 1 selling jersey in baseball this year and the number 1 selling rookie jersey of all time.
And my thought is this. The only way they should sell an Aaron Judge jersey is by the size he wears. So everybody should have to wear that jersey, whatever size it is, no matter who buys it, from a kid,
even if it's
adult,
a kid,
doesn't matter. Then he's got an Aaron Judge jersey. Look at that.
Yeah.
It's for real, the real size.
Yeah, for the kids, it'll be a nightgown. All right, Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Jam-packed guest list today. Plenty of baseball talk, plenty of football as well on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And coming up next, he is quite possibly the most productive player in the NFL. But right now, he has everybody lining up to take their shots at him. And it's not Odell Beckham that we're talking about.
Home isn't just a place. It's a feeling. Whether you're at home, your business, or online, ADT helps keep you safe. With security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance. So you can feel at home, wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling. ADT. Home. Safe home.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
All right, we are Mike and Mike as we roll along on this very busy day with the baseball playoffs in full swing. The football season, of course, going along. And our buddy Field Yates has joined us in our studio. We'll talk some football, some fantasy with him, and a whole lot more. How are you, Field?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. We want to get your opinion, too, and let's all hear this together before we get to that on the baseball, because the Yankees get the win last night in a thrilling game.
Yep.
And, Mike, you mentioned you heard Booger yesterday.
Yes, yeah.
And he raised this thought that at first I hated. And as the day went on, it kind of grew on me as well, which you're saying it did you,
It
too.
did me as well, because I guess the easy way would be a best of 3, but now you have the possibility of playing 3 games before you get to the divisional round, and people thought that was too much, and Booger had an idea where it could be as little as 1 and only 2 tops.
Yeah, which is to, if you want to continue, I am in favor of any rule change in general that places increased emphasis on the regular season.
Right.
I'm an importance of the regular season guy. So his idea was, if you have just using the Yankees and Twins as an example,
Okay.
the team that has the better record, not only do they have home field, but they only have to win once. The road team has to win twice. That was his idea. So in the Booger plan, if we'll call it that, it would be over now.
Yes,
if
it
the
would.
Twins had won last night, there'd be another game tonight, and that would be the winner-take-all matchup. Our friends Waddle and Sylvia in Chicago on ESPN 1000 had the commissioner, Rob Manfred, on yesterday. They bounced it off him.
Once we adopted that idea, we started talking about 1 game versus 3 games.
The problem with 3 games is no matter how you slice it, it's another 4 or 5 days between the end of the season and when the division winners get to play for the first time. And in baseball, that kind of a layoff is not an advantage. It's, in fact, a disadvantage because people are used to playing every day. So I think the one game is exciting for the fans. I think it's also the right balance in terms of rewarding division winners and giving them a little extra boost going into the playoffs.
I get the one game is exciting. In and out. I mean, listen, we're used to that in football. You got one shot. You know, you have a bad game and you're the better team. Too bad. You're done. So in baseball, there is that element to it of all of a sudden, here's the Yankees down 3-0 in the first inning and the big uh-ohs that are going on, to where baseball, basketball, hockey, we're used to series. So is there a way to figure out, even if it's a tiny, tiny series or the possibility of a couple of games, do you want to go down that road?
Why don't we let Yates make the decision? Field, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I think that last night and the circumstances surrounding the Yankees and the Twins, the fact that their records were so disparate during the regular season is part of the reason why people are downplaying the notion of a one-game wild card. Right? I mean, if the Yankees and Twins have been a game apart in the regular season this year, people will not be having the idea of, like, you know, the Twins need to win 2 games to advance versus the 1 game for the Yankees. The booger plan, as we're going to call it. You know, to be honest with you, I think that this one-game wild card is sort of silly, period. It just is. I mean, I think the better solution is to ditch it, is to go back to where it was before. And I understand the added excitement. I understand the juice that was flowing last night in Yankee Stadium, how excited everybody was about that game. And the fact that not just the Twins were competitive until the final day of the regular season, but teams like the Angels were making moves at the deadline to acquire a Justin Upton to bolster their chances to get that second wild card spot. Heck, you know, the Royals for a little while, it was, hey, we're going to probably have to break up this band after this season, but we still might have one more shot. But truthfully, like, if the Yankees had lost that game last night, in their body of work, I mean, they were knocking on the door of winning the AL East this year. To me, it would have felt a little bit, they got shortchanged. So I would ditch the wild card game, the play-in game entirely. That would be my take. I'm sure most people disagree with that. I thought that last night's game, that was like a perfect demonstration of where we're at with Twitter, right? You open up Twitter, top half of the first inning last night, and my entire timeline is 162 games plus 1 wild card play-in game. Bad idea. Yankees, a season gone down the drain. A couple of, 15 minutes later, and it's just like a flowing string of Didi Gregorius tweets. It's just, I love the excitement of that game. I would ditch it, though, in fairness to the team.
So you say ditch the wild card?
Ditch the one game play.
One game play.
Yeah, I think it should just be the traditional 3 division winners plus 1 wild card.
That's how young you are. That isn't traditional, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
even that was
the most recent
iteration
of it.
I mean, Bud Selig got unbelievably criticized even for doing that. All right. Field Yates is in our studio. Let's turn our attention to some football here. Field is brought to you by DraftKings. Play free 1-week fantasy football this Sunday at DraftKings. Just use the code Mike, only at DraftKings.com. Before we get to this business with Antonio Brown, let's do some of this fantasy stuff. We've seen a lot of injuries, so where are people going here? Particularly the injury to Dalvin Cook, which was I hated to see it because I really liked that kid, and I picked him to be Rookie of the Year. And obviously the kid in Kansas City will have something to say about that, and so will Deshaun Watson. But one way or another, that injury and others, how is that affecting people's fantasy?
Yeah, obviously Latavius Murray is the next man up in Minnesota. They only have 2 traditional running backs on the roster right now, so they may roster somebody else before week's end. But Latavius Murray played 20 of the 25 snaps amongst running backs once Dalvin Cook got hurt in week 4. It tells you that this team probably is going to hone in on him as the workhorse back. He's had back-to-back years as being that player for the Oakland Raiders, and I understand that in a lot of cases, free agency investments turn to fool's gold. But let's not forget that at one point this offseason, the Vikings thought enough of Latavius Murray to give him 3 years and north of $15 million, including $5 million plus in cash this year. So this is not some player that was an afterthought for Minnesota. I think they are intent on using Latavius Murray as their starting running back going forward. Other names to sort of get back to the fantasy side, Wendell Smallwood, the Eagles running back, had a really productive game for them in Los Angeles, and what they, seems like that home game for the Philadelphia Eagles in Carson, California. He and LeGarrette Blount both ran very well. Deshaun Watson, you mentioned, was a Rookie of the Year candidate. Heck, he's a Player of the Year, a Player of the Week candidate based off what he did in Week 4, and a hot waiver wire ad in fantasy this week, not just because of 4 teams going on a bye this week, including Drew Brees, Kirk Cousins, and Matt Ryan, but also the injury to Derek Carr and also some of the struggles of other quarterbacks early on this season.
You look at Murray, a couple of years ago, he had 266 carries in 16 games for Oakland, 14 games last year, 195. So, I mean, he is used to carrying the load. So I'm sure he was as bummed as anybody else when Minnesota took Dalvin Cook.
Sure.
And all of a sudden he was like, well, wait a minute. Looks like my need here isn't going to be as much now. He's going to get the full load. How about in a place like Tennessee, not just Mariota, the iffiness of the hamstring, but the domino effect of other players you would want to take on that offense that maybe you would or wouldn't because of that.
I was going to say, if you are a Rashard Matthews owner, for example, or Delaney Walker owner, for example, in fantasy football, and you're staring down, the possibility of Matt Castle at quarterback, that obviously changes your lineup decisions. I mean, I'm not sure how you can have nearly the confidence that you would have if Marcus Mariota were playing. It's going to be tough sledding. The tight end position is so scarce with options that you can trust week to week. Other than Gronk and Kelsey and Greg Olsen when he's healthy, there's only about 5 or 6 guys in total that you really trust implicitly. Delaney Walker is still probably part of that list, but probably have to manage expectations there. And then Rashard Matthews has been really good for Tennessee and has kind of emerged as that number 1 wide receiver, even though they drafted Corey Davis until Davis gets fully healthy. Right. I think this week you have to consider other options on your bench.
The other storyline there, not from a fantasy standpoint, but very much from a real-life standpoint, is that the Titans, with Mariota a little bit banged up with the hamstring, they sign Brandon Weeden. Yep. They kick the tires on a couple of quarterbacks, several names, all kind of the journeyman variety, and they wind up signing Weeden. And that's a place, and I heard Louis Riddick talking about it yesterday, he called it football on the grass, where Colin Kaepernick's skill set just seems to fit exactly what it is they're doing offensively. So if they didn't even consider him there, we're in a place where it would have seemed to have made all the sense in the world from a football standpoint. It's just become increasingly obvious. No one is even considering signing
I'm not sure
him.
Why anybody would be shocked that they didn't. They went into the season with Matt Castle as their backup.
Right.
I mean, he's a stationary quarterback, so that's who they decided to go with their backup. If that was truly a thought, why wouldn't you bring in a guy like that before the season? Say, hey, this would be a nice guy, same type of with the run options that he can do like Mariota does. So that's why it didn't stun me. You have decided Matt Castle is your backup going into the season, that's the type of quarterback you're going to play with.
Here's where we should be at when it comes to quarterback fill-ins that aren't named Colin Kaepernick. The surprise shouldn't be if Colin Kaepernick does not get a look. The surprise should be when he gets a look. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve a look, but based off what we've seen over the past, how many months has it been since he opted out of his contract? 7 months?
Yeah,
8 months?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, obviously the interest has been scant. He obviously had a visit with Seattle. He's had some other teams that have seemingly explored him from 30,000 feet. But that's been about it for Colin Kaepernick. So if you are surprised that Colin Kaepernick is not getting a look, you're acting surprised just for the sake of being surprised. You aren't actually surprised. I mean, anybody who's been following this should not be surprised.
I'm not surprised, but
right.
the only place where you look at certain places where you think the similarity in the skill set of the starting quarterback to Kaepernick would lend itself to saying we can kind of run the same offense with this guy as our backup rather than having to change everything we do to put Castle or Weeden on the field.
100% agree. That's why I said, why wouldn't that have been a thought process before the season started?
We all know
knowing Mariota got hurt last year, and maybe you could just have a guy step in who could kind of do the same thing. I think I got the number right. Since free agency, 52 quarterbacks have been signed since free agency. Now, some re-sign with their own team, but you know some of the names out there. We've talked about them all the time when guys you don't even remember played quarterback are being signed as free agents, and Kaepernick isn't. So, I mean, let's just, can we stop the facade here? Or as Kevin Hart would say, the facade?
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's ridiculous as to why everybody thinks, well, it's a football issue. It's a football-related thing. Just stop. I mean, just you sound ridiculous now when you're saying things like that.
All right, we'll take a short break on that thought. We'll come back again. They're lining up to criticize maybe the most productive player in the National Football League that includes his teammates. And they're probably all right. You'll hear it all next. Mike and Mike. Mike and Field Yates, but the straight talk's not coming from us. It was coming yesterday from Pittsburgh, where we saw this past weekend Antonio Brown flip over a Gatorade thing, and he's all upset about not getting a ball thrown his way. And You assume that Ben Roethlisberger was going to get up there yesterday and just diffuse that. Say next, listen, that's just him being competitive. We love that about him. It's no problem whatsoever. Well, that isn't what Ben said at all.
AB is the best receiver in the world, maybe one of the best to ever play the game. And I like to think that him and I together maybe are one of the best quarterback-wide receiver combos that have ever played the game. So I don't know that he needs to react that way. I mean, he's superhuman on the football field. And when that happens, it almost brings him back to being a mere mortal, if you will, because he gets in his head and he just messes with all of us a little bit. And I want AB, and I said this to him. I'm not saying anything that I haven't told him and talked to him about. And we've had private conversations, and I'm not trying to call AB out, but I just think that, this is causing a distraction that none of us really need.
I mean, we seem so shocked that a wide receiver acted like a diva. I mean, one thing I heard Ben continue to say is, come talk to me on the sideline. And I agree with that. I mean, he had a double move. It was a route that took a little bit of time. Ben had already chosen to go on the shorter route, a little out of the backfield. And Antonio Brown was wide open, but this dude has been targeted, at least 10 times in the first 3 games? Was it 2 games, 3 games?
And then 9 in week 4.
So then now this happens and he loses his mind. A, I don't get so shocked because it's a wide receiver. It just doesn't affect me as much. But B, then you think, why does he need to do that? I mean, the ball comes to him so often that this one time it doesn't, he loses his mind?
Well, I think there's sort of 2 separate issues here. First is the Antonio Brown temper tantrum in game.
Yeah.
That right there is unacceptable. Like, he's too good of that. We can all agree here that he's too talented of a player and too heavily targeted and too important to that franchise and too much of a professional and been around long enough to understand why there is no upside to that unless he wants to go viral. And that's basically what happened, right? Like, you keep your mouth shut, you address it on the sidelines, and again, 9 targets that game, which was a low total for Antonio Brown in a game this year. 9. That would be like a season high for a bunch of players in the NFL. That's issue 1. But issue 2 is, does Ben Roethlisberger need to not air their dirty laundry in a radio interview, but readdress those comments that he said he already told Antonio Brown in private conversations directly to Antonio. So I was surprised that Ben sort of reviewed those comments and made them public, only because I think the message probably was sent loud and clear in a conversation to Antonio that he had with him previously. And I'd imagine that Mike Tomlin, being the great head coach that he is, probably addressed those comments with Antonio Brown as needed as well. So I was surprised to see that Ben went public with those comments, and I think those were fairly strong for a court. I mean, I think there's never a perfect comparison, but to your point, diffusing situations, don't you feel like, and again, not a perfect comparison, Odell Beckham Jr. has been a player that his quarterback has been asked about repeatedly. And it feels like Eli Manning has almost perpetually downplayed some of the stuff surrounding Odell Beckham Jr. Heck, even following that playoff last year, Odell Beckham Jr. spent Monday in Miami on the boat and then dropped a couple of passes against Green Bay at a quiet Sunday. Eli just say, hey, listen, the bottom line is, if you're going to be a great player, you have to handle the tension a certain way, and you can't let the outside stuff become a distraction. It was a diffusion as opposed to, I thought Ben sort of just breathed a little bit more life into this conversation.
Yeah, and you're right to that, because I know I've said it for 18 years. You never do that, publicly. You always downplay it, and you're right about Eli downplaying it. Mike Tomlin even jumped on Antonio Brown a bit about learning a lesson and the way to act on the sidelines as well.
Which leads me to believe, to your point, Field, because we know quarterbacks are pretty – this is going to sound negative. I don't mean it that way. Pretty calculating in what they say.
Yes.
That this was well thought out. Like they decided we're not going to just make this into nothing. We're going to make it into something. And I should give the courtesy for the sound bites there, by the way, was 93.7 The Fan. That was the Ben Roethlisberger interview. It feels like that was something they made a conscious decision, that Tomlin and Ben, whether they talked it over or somehow, that just said, no, we're not just going to make this into nothing. We're going to make it into something, because you guys are right. They usually make it into nothing, and they pointedly didn't this time.
Yeah, and Ben, I would say this. Ben tends to be a bit more transparent.
He does.
Than some quarterbacks.
Especially about his injuries.
About his injury. That's sort of the joke, right? Is it's like, probably an 8-week injury, but I'll be out there in 4, whatever it is, or exactly, So maybe this is just Ben's honesty on display. But I was just a bit surprised. And maybe you're right, Creed. Like maybe there was a message, subconsciously or not, they were trying to send. But I would imagine Antonio Brown has got the message loud and clear. And by the way, I wouldn't be surprised if he has 15 targets on Sunday, even though he faces an absolutely outstanding duo of cornerbacks in Jacksonville right now. A.J. Boye and Jalen Ramsey are playing out of their mind right now for the Jaguars.
Straight Talk Wireless nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. He is Field Yates, and there is no other. Field, good to see you. Thank you very much. Golic, and we continue with a huge hour coming up. Jon Gruden on the way, Kirk Herbstreit on the way, and much more on a wild one in the Bronx last night as well. Stay there. Busy with Mike and Mike.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Hey, sports fans, if you're heading out to watch the game and need a fill-up, why not join the Fuel Rewards program and earn rewards on Shell Fuel? Members save on their Shell fill-up every day. So sign up free today at fuelrewards.com/ESPN.
We're back and better than ever. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, like Jon Gruden and Kirk Herbstreit, both of whom will join us in this hour, back-to-back, always great fun. It's a particularly big day for us, Mike, because they've awarded the Nobel Prizes in chemistry, which is a day that we always look forward to with great eagerness.
We're going to tell you who won, the three people who won that and what they won it for, and break it down a little bit for you. I always, you know me, I'm a sponge for learning.
Yes. Particularly chemistry. I know you have a particular interest in that.
I love mixing things, and hopefully they explode.
Well, people have always said we have chemistry. And
there you go.
They could have given us the Nobel Prize.
Say we're on our way out. What a great way to award us that right now for our chemistry.
They gave us that Hall of Fame thing. Could we not get? Was it too much to ask for us to get the Nobel Prize for our chemistry?
Maybe we came in second. Do they have like a list of finishers and how they finished?
We lost in the wild card game,
Did we?
I think is what pretty much happened. We only got one game, and that was it. We had a 3-0 lead in the first inning, and that was all she wrote. And just very quickly on that, as John is ready to go here, with the Yankees coming from behind, they're down 3-0 in the first inning, 1/3 of an inning, Severino's out, places, everyone is worried, and they come back and win the game and all that. And then we started talking about the wild card loser. And LD tweets at me, Greeny, the play-in game is like the participation trophy. Stand by. No, it's not. The play-in game has served its purpose in baseball. Had it not been for the second wild card, there would have been nothing to pay attention to in the entire last month of the season in the American League, because the Yankees were so far ahead of all the other wild card contenders. That would have been it. And the race between the Yankees and the Red Sox in the American League East would have been basically meaningless. The advantage of being the division winner versus the wild card was almost nothing back before they added this. So it did serve its purpose. It is a regular season award is the wrong word.
Yeah.
It is a rule that was designed to make the regular season more meaningful, and you know me, I'm always in favor of that.
I agree. I absolutely think it made the regular season more meaningful. I agree with that, and so now are we satisfied with one game playing? That's the next thing. Right now, I have no problem where we are because it's better to me than what it was. You can always keep improving, but I think they improved on making the regular season more actively enjoyable to watch.
Okay, so we will get back to all the baseball coming up in just a few minutes, but every week at this time, it's our pleasure to bring in Jon Gruden, and we always play him a little classic rock.
Yes.
And we know what his general favorites are, but there was only one artist that even received consideration on this day. There's a Tom Petty channel on Sirius XM I listened to all day yesterday.
I know you guys played a lot of that yesterday,
yeah.
And I was reading about that. Just horrible. Feel so awful for obviously Tom Petty's family and such, but boy, lost a great one.
Jon Gruden, a little Tom Petty for you this morning. How are you today?
Yeah, good morning, guys. That's a great call. He's one of Florida's finest, and we're going to miss him. We're playing Tom Petty round the clock here at the FFCA also. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. Yeah, I loved him. Yeah, we played Mike. We'll talk about him later. We talked about that a lot yesterday when you weren't here. And, John, of course, we talked a lot about your game Monday night with Kansas City and Washington. And let's start with the Chiefs. They're the last unbeaten standing in the NFL right now, and their quarterback, who – it almost feels as though when they write up the term game manager, which has turned into like a nasty thing to say about a quarterback, they put up a picture of Alex Smith. But you watch some of the plays he made to win that game, particularly that scramble right and that throw that he makes at the end to set up the winning field goal, and you find yourself saying, like, this year is he playing as more than that? As you watched him Monday and you've watched the tape of his early part of the season, what are you seeing in Alex Smith?
He's pretty much the same Alex Smith, I think, that you see every week. He did make some impact plays scrambling. There's no doubt about that. But if you check his history, he's run for a lot of yards in this league, created a lot of offense on his own. I think the thing you have to remember with him is he went to the 49ers when the 49ers were really bad. He hung in there with 7 straight different offensive coordinators, and he had that team on the brink of going to the Super Bowl. He had a lot to do with the team that went to the Super Bowl. I think they were 6-2-1. They went with a young quarterback, and he got traded to Kansas City. But he helped push the 49ers near the promised land, and then he went to Kansas City. They were 2-14. They were a bad team, and he's got them on the brink again of playoff football and championship football. All you can say about him is he's a winner, but he isn't spectacular enough for a lot of people, unfortunately.
One of the things that came up yesterday, I had Booger here, and I think it might have been Louis Riddick, when we're looking at Kansas City, and you say to yourself, when it gets to be cold outside, do they have enough classical wide receivers on the outside who on a 3rd and 7 are going to run a route that gets you the 8 yards that you need? Obviously, Tyreek Hill can make spectacular plays, and their primary receiving weapon is the tight end in Kelsey. Do they have enough talent on pure traditional wide receiving talent on the outside to be the best team in the AFC?
I think so. I mean, I look at the New England Patriots, who everybody picked to be the number 1 team in the AFC. Clearly, they have Gronkowski. The Chiefs have Kelsey. I guess it's Brandon Cooks. They have Tyreek Hill. They have a unique offense. This is an incredibly unique offense. It's hard to prepare for because you don't know what to put on a card and practice against. There's so much window dressing, so many exotic plays. Heck, they're running Jason Kelsey in the Wildcat as a quarterback on 3rd and 3 in a 17-17 game. Andy Reid is doing some things right now on offense, I think, that jazz it up, that help his receiving core. And to answer your question in a long roundabout way, I think they do.
We look at that division, and a lot of people think 3 can make the playoffs there. The Chiefs undefeated, Broncos 3-1, and the Raiders are 2-2 and lose their quarterback. So from the way you coached it and looking at what Jack Del Rio is going to do, it can be anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. Were you the type of coach, or does a coach need to kind of find the leaders of that team, the vets of that team? Do you talk with them individually or everybody as a team on, we know it's easy, next man up's just got to step in and do the job, but quarterback's usually a different position here. So how do you deal with that as a head coach to maybe find certain people on the team to try and talk to about this, or do you just leave it be?
Well, I have a face-to-face meeting with the team. No cell phones, no emails, no Snapchats or Twitters. Let's have a conversation as a team. I think when we won our Super Bowl, Mike, we lost Brad Johnson for 3 or 4 games, and we had to win 2 games with Rob Johnson. I think we started Sean King. You got to find a way to win. You have a defense, you have special teams, you have Marshawn Lynch, who I've heard about throughout the whole offseason. You have 3 Pro Bowl linemen. Come on, you got to win a game. You got to find a way to win a football game. We have enough players. We got to rally around E.J. Manuel. Does everybody understand that? And hopefully everybody can rise to the occasion. That's what the great teams have to do, fight through adversity, and there's adversity right now in Oakland.
And the game you have this week, Minnesota at Chicago, is starting Mitch Trubisky, who's the 2nd pick of the draft, 13 starts in college. We all know the story, and a lot of the things we were talking about, John, if they were going to make that move, and I'm sure you would echo, is it can't all be about the quarterback who's playing in Glennon just playing poorly. You have to believe, and so again, with the coaching cap on, where does a Trubisky have to, what do you need to be seeing out of him in practice, in walkthrough, in the weight room, in film sessions to say, okay, our starter isn't playing that well, but I have to have confidence in this young kid to go in and not have his eyes too wide open?
You know, I think they probably have seen that in the preseason, probably in training camp. I'm sure internally they have seen that. He moved the team, Mike, in the preseason. I watched him carefully. He threw the ball down the field. He put points on the board. He's an athletic guy, and he made some audibles. I think offensive coordinator Dowell Loggins has had a lot of experience working with young quarterbacks, and I'm sure they're going to fast-track him, run some plays that he's comfortable with. The problem is, I think the strength of the Vikings is Mike Zimmer in this defense. It'll be a great challenge for him, but I know they want to get him off to a good start, and I'm excited for Trubisky. He's a great kid. He's an unknown. He only played 1 year at North Carolina, but the Chicago Bears, they need some positive energy from the quarterback position. It's been quite some time.
Mike and Mike, Jon Gruden with us again. That's the game Monday night, and the Bears will play it without Danny Trevathan. The announcement yesterday by Derek Brooks, who played for you, of course, John, all those years in Tampa, that the suspension of Trevathan reduced from 2 games to 1, but this will be the game that he missed. And Mike was saying earlier this morning, that hit, the specific hit that Trevathan made in that game on Thursday night was commonplace when he was playing. Booger McFarland said to me yesterday, we had a motto in Tampa, if it's wiggling, hit it.
Yeah.
And so that was the way the game was played. So, John, I'd like to get your perspective as one of the prominent voices in the game. Do you believe that was an actionable play? Is that a play, the way the game is played today, that was worthy of a suspension?
You know, there's a lot of ways to look at this, and I don't want to see anybody get hurt. It was a vicious hit, but not to be politically correct. You're supposed to run to the ball. And we used to tell our receivers, if you want to run an inside breaking route and you want to fight for yardage after the catch, you better be careful, because these defensive players, they're on the hunt. I think some of these receivers that are running these quick screens and these inside breaking RPOs, they need to get down, personally. I'm not blaming Devontae Adams, but I think there's 2 ways to look at it. I've always coached energy, hustling, rushing to the pile. And if it is wiggling, you do hit it, because guys are fighting for yardage. And sometimes you got to give up the ball because of 1 inch. Inches matter. That's why they measure first down. That's why they have a crew down there with those chains. So I'm a little sensitive. I thought Trevathan made a great play. Obviously, what he's hitting, the surface, below the neck, all those things, I'm totally agreeing on. But I thought Trevathan made a heck of a play, and unfortunately, a man got hurt.
And I get what you're saying overall, because in this case, it would be tough for Devontae Adams just to get down. He was kind of being held up. But to your point, overall, I get it. These guys running these routes and feel they have a whole lot of freedom in there because defenders getting penalized for it. You know, not to belabor this, but my point on this, and John, listen, I looked for hits like this all the time. To me, it wasn't so much that he hit a guy coming across the middle or a guy that was wiggling, which is perfectly legal to do. You know where we are in football. You're working with little leagues and high schools. You see it now. They want guys to keep their heads up. And he dropped his head down, and I think that more than anything else said, okay, we're going to have to do something here. If he did that same hit but led with his shoulder, even if it caught Devontae in the head or lower, I don't think we'd be talking about any of this. So to me, I thought it was more directly related to that. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. The crown of the helmet is the big discussion. Try to keep the helmet out of all tackling. And you've heard the Pete Carroll, the Seahawks, who brought rugby tackling into their training camp, and it's been effective for them in terms of safety and reducing penalties and all those things. I agree with 100%. Keep the crown, keep the helmet out of tackling, certainly as much as possible.
And another issue that I wonder from a head coaching standpoint, how you deal with the Chargers now. I'm playing in the stadium they're playing in, and more visiting fans instead of for the home team there. If you're a head coach for them or out there in a situation like that, and Anthony Lynn running that show now, do you talk about, is it the old us against the world mentality? How do you deal with that in this type of a situation where they're in transit?
That's a tough explanation, really. I think they knew what they were getting into when the season started. I always tried to have a contingency plan. I used to talk to the players a little bit about it. When things go wrong, let's not come unglued. Let's not go into this season with the intention that everything's going to be roses. I don't think they probably expected to be 0-4, but they knew they were going to play in a high school stadium. They knew they were going to have to move from San Diego to L.A. It was going to be inconvenient, probably strange and uncomfortable. But the bottom line is the only way they fix things is to win a football game. And their kicker has missed game-ending field goals twice. They're a good enough team with a good enough quarterback to get a win. That's the only thing we can focus on. We knew this was going to be uncomfortable to start with.
It's Jon Gruden again. A very interesting game coming up this Monday night. The Vikings and the Bears, and the debut of what the Bears hope will be their quarterback of the future in Mitch Trubisky. John, thank you so much. We'll see you in Chicago.
Thanks, John.
Okay, guys. Hey, have a good one.
Jon Gruden with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. And just to circle it back to where the conversation began, you weren't here, Mike, yesterday to talk about Tom Petty, but I played his music all morning long. And again, there is a Tom Petty channel on Sirius XM that I listen to all day, and great stuff. They had Cameron Crowe was on there, who of course long before he was making movies was a music writer for Rolling Stone, and he was talking about unbelievable stories about Tom Petty in the 80s. It was great to listen to.
That's our wheelhouse. Tom Petty, that distinctive voice. Are you kidding me? And you read about others. I'm reading about other artists like John Mayer, who reasons why they wanted to cover his songs and such. And the guy was gold, absolute gold. It was stunning. It was my wife who told me when this all was going on. I thought, 66 years old. Much too young. Just such a shame. But yeah, this is a guy that was part of the music I listened to growing up. He was right in the wheelhouse of it.
Yeah, he was great. I was so sad about that. And anyway, we knew John would like that one way or another. And then to sort of take it back to some of the conversation that we were having there with the football, I didn't get your take on Trubisky. It sounds to me like yours is relatively similar to the one that I had yesterday, which is I really hope this is more about the Bears deciding, you know what, he's ready, and we have an elongated break here, a week and a half, than it is Glennon is struggling, team is losing, coach is on the hot seat, all of those things. Because right now, developing the kid is the most important thing they can do.
I think it has to be a little bit of both. But I think one of the main thing is okay, we feel like there needs to be a quarterback change. Our quarterback is turning the ball over too much. Is the guy we want to put in ready? And by ready, we don't know if he's game ready. Is he done enough in practice, as I said, in walkthrough, in film sessions, to feel comfortable in what we saw in preseason? Because preseason, what he sees is going to be way different than the preseason. You have to have that comfort level. And if you can say, I'm not sure, then you shouldn't play him. Now, does it make your decision, how if you want to do something, you can talk yourself into anything and say, oh, yeah, I believe he's ready. That's something only John Fox and that coaching staff know, how ready that he is going to be. But it has to be partly that, because I agree with Herm, especially when you're talking about turnovers. A rookie can turn the ball over, so let him get in there and let him start playing. So I don't have a problem with this move at all. You had 10 days, so you had the little extra time to kind of breathe about the whole situation and then get into it and take over in the huddle. The guys who know more than anything else are going to be like that offensive line and that offense. They're either saying, okay, we see some things in this guy, or amongst themselves in their own individual meeting rooms, they're going to go, man, we're screwed. Either way, it's still a rookie quarterback. So even though we're talking up Deshaun Watson's going to make mistakes. So Mitch Trubisky is going to make mistakes. But you have a guy, and I agree with Jon Gruden, you play to his strengths, you give him comfortable plays. Like, remember, we first saw Deshaun Watson, his first preseason play was a rollout. Yeah. A couple options, quick options, run it, throw it, get rid of it, whatever, but make it a little easier on him. But you're playing in the regular season as well. So you're not getting vanilla defenses. You're getting in Minnesota, you're getting a really good defense on how they want to play him. So a lot is going to fall on that offensive line to protect him, to hopefully get a running game going with the two-headed monster that they have and ease it up. That's where everybody else, what you do is everybody else feels a responsibility to pick it up more. When we were going through the season without Randall, we went through quarterback after quarterback. I know, because I obviously know the guys on offense were saying we need to try and do more. On defense, we would be like, okay, we need to even pick it up for us. We already want to get a turnover. We already want to score when we get a turnover, but we need to really continue to emphasize that even more. We need to help out the situation. And that's where you are. Now, a lot of people will say, well, are the Bears good enough to do that? Well, that's not what players think. Players, every time they walk out onto the field, have the thought process that they have the ability to win the game. Every play, every game, that's how you're built. So you go in there thinking, okay, I really need to focus in on my job and get it done, and maybe even a little more to help out this young quarterback and give him some confidence. What you don't need, this is where we said no drops. You don't need drops. You talk about one of the best ways to help is to get a running game going, and that falls on the running back and the O-line and the receivers. Make the catches he throws. They may not all be right where they need to be. Help the young kid out. Make those catches. He may not be able to throw you open right now or put it right where you want it. You got to step up and do a little more for him.
Here's the other place where Deshaun Watson was so much more prepared, however. Not only did he just play more games.
Oh, yeah.
and against better competition.
Sure.
We saw him twice against Alabama national championship scenarios. But remember, we're now dealing in a place where that guy played 2 full playoff runs, right?
Yeah.
They had a month between the regular season and then the college football playoff 2 years ago. Clemson beat Oklahoma and killed them, right? So he dealt with all of the media, all of the build up to that, dealing with the hype of it, and then playing Alabama and playing a huge game and losing a heartbreaker, and then coming back another season, went through a down start of last year. Remember? All the quotes, he's not having fun and all that kind of stuff, and put it together again, had a huge second half, obliterated Ohio State, and then beats Alabama. So this guy was so prepared. Mitchell Trubisky played 1 year at North Carolina.
Yeah.
So to just say, well, if Watson's doing it, so let's put him out there.
No.
It
can't
that's
be
a terrible reason to be doing this.
And I don't believe it is. I mean, I'm going to give John Fox and the staff a little more credit than that and say, you know what, man, this guy's going to be a deer in headlights. So let's put him out there anyway and see what he does. I mean, there's no way they're doing that. Now, is there a way, as I said, if you really want something to happen, you can talk yourself into it a little more and think someone's more ready than they are? That's certainly a possibility. But as Jon Gruden said, he liked what he saw in the post or in the preseason with him and what he was doing. And we're not at practice. We don't know the development that's going on in practice, but they're just turning the ball over too much. So I don't have a problem with this move. Trubisky can run out of trouble. He's a better athlete. He can move and maybe make some plays on the fly along with mistakes. I have no problem with this move happening right now.
All right, we'll see what happens. You'll see it all on Monday night.
Home isn't just a place. It's a feeling that you're safe to enjoy the things that matter most. ADT lets you take that feeling with you. Whether you're at home, your business, or online, we help keep you safe. With security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance, so you can feel at home wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling for less than $1 a day. ADT. Home. Safe home.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
What a great time of the year this is. Obviously, baseball playoffs in full swing. We'll continue talking about that as we go. Tons of football to get to, and for that we turn our attention to Kirk Herbstreit, who joins us every Wednesday at this time on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And College Game Day will be in Fort Worth this weekend for West Virginia and TCU. And Herbie, it'll be a really big week as Lee Corso will be donning the headgear for the 300th time, which is really something. I mean, in a sports world where there are very few things you can count on, to turn you guys on every Saturday morning and see the coach putting on one of those headgear, that is definitely one of them.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's 300, but it's always, we call it a skit. It's no longer just a headgear. It's like he's up to something, and I think Lee Fitting's behind it as well as the mastermind. They come up with whatever they come up with, and the rest of us try not to know what he's going to do until he does it. But he's 82 years old. He is the man, and we love him to death. And he's our guy, and it's great. Well, I'm sure we'll celebrate that in a unique way this weekend.
It is one of the most fun things to watch, maybe except when you guys are up there, and he's given also with it. It's not just headgear, but there's also like other things with it that can cause bodily harm. and then you kind of have to be careful, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, he'll have guns up there. He'll have live animals. You just never know what he's gonna do. But it's so ironic to think that thing started way back, I think in '96, and it just continues on. And people, you kind of almost know what he's going to do, but you still want to watch him do it, and it's just fun. It kind of sets the tone for the day, and I think people over the years, different generations, have come accustomed to, hey, whose headgear did he put on? Everybody talks about it throughout the day, so very, very cool for that to be a big part of our show.
Yeah, it really, really is. And you guys in Fort Worth this week for 23 West Virginia, 8 TCU. TCU had the big win over Oklahoma State. It's interesting you have a former Florida quarterback at West Virginia, the former A&M, Texas A&M quarterback at TCU now, Will Greer at West Virginia and Kenny Hill at TCU. And quite honestly, West Virginia lost their first game against Virginia Tech, won the next 3. This is it for them, right? This is their chance to get back into this thing. One more loss, they'll be done. But they can pull off this win against an undefeated TCU. They're going to be right back in this thing. What's their best chance to do it?
Yeah, I think Greer's, they've got some great athletes around Will Greer, and Dana Holgorsen he's been very consistent with his brand since he's been in Morgantown with a certain toughness that they play with their defense. They're not intimidated by anybody. They'll get in your face. They throw the ball around. They're playing a really good team. I mean, I think a lot of people weren't really paying much attention to TCU until they upset Oklahoma State, but I think TCU, it's obviously just as big a game and just as big of an opportunity for them playing at home against a talented team. And it's an opportunity to continue to take another step in that conference and try to set up bigger showdowns down the road. But, if you look at the slate of games, it's clearly the game that we should be at. And Chris Fowler and I are actually, and Maria Taylor are actually going to be up in Ann Arbor from Michigan and Michigan State later that night. But that game in Fort Worth will be probably a typical shootout that you can expect to see in the Big 12.
Mike and Herbie with us here, brought to you by Allstate. Make sure you check out the Herbstreit and Fitzsimmons podcast as well. Okay, so this is where I was yesterday. Herbie, I had Booger in here, and we were going through some of this stuff, and it's starting to feel like Alabama and Clemson are really separating themselves from the pack. So we were trying to figure out who else do we really buy into? Who else do we feel like is a legit top-shelf team? So let's run through a couple of them. You mentioned Michigan is the game that you guys have this weekend. In the Big Ten, you've got Michigan unbeaten. You've got Penn State unbeaten. You got Ohio State with their loss, but maybe they are. Who are we buying into as a legit contender in the Big Ten?
But don't forget about Wisconsin.
And excuse me, I forgot them. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin has a chance to be possibly undefeated going into Indianapolis. And now you're 60 minutes away from playing for a chance to get to the playoffs. So, and I think Wisconsin's legit. So I think Wisconsin's in there. I think, I don't know what to make of Ohio State after their performance against Oklahoma at home. People getting excited because they've looked a lot better against inferior competition. But truly, we're not going to know anything about Ohio State and for a couple of weeks until they play Penn State. Then we'll be able to figure it out. And that game's in Columbus. So Ohio State's going to think this is our chance to kind of avenge the loss to OU to show, that we belong up there with the big boys. And Penn State's going to think this is our chance to play Ohio State. This is the team that we beat, and we won the Big Ten championship, and they went to the playoff. This is their chance to kind of avenge that. So I think a lot will be decided on that day. And then with Michigan, with John O'Korn in right now for Wilton State, they're kind of like that team that's just a little bit forgotten in the Big Ten, but very, very talented defense. And I'm anxious to see John O'Korn this weekend against this Sparty defense, because the Spartans are back to playing defense the way you would expect the Mark D'Antonio team. So I don't think it's fair to just, I know that Booger will just throw anything out there and make a statement. I'm one of these guys that, I could throw something out there, but I'd like to see these teams play each other. Otherwise, you're just kind of guessing at this point. In the Big 12, there's TCU and OU. The winner of that game in Oklahoma State, people still think's the player, but I think the winner of the TCU Oklahoma game, I think is going to be the team that will eventually emerge in the Big 12. The SEC. Have you guys watched Georgia the last couple weeks?
That's where I wanted to go, Herbie. I mean, that's a team I look at, and I watched them play. I was in South Bend when they beat Notre Dame by a point. That loss is looking better and better for Notre Dame as Notre Dame is running the ball so well. We'll see what's up with Wimbush and his foot. But Georgia, the speed on defense, that freshman quarterback, what he's doing, the two-headed running attack. Man, stand up and take notice of that team.
Yeah, for real. And Georgia setting up, you imagine if Georgia keeps playing the way they are and they stay healthy, you imagine Georgia, Alabama in the SEC championship game. I mean, that is a clash of the Titans. That would be a huge game. So you have them. Miami, I don't know. Is Miami as good as they looked the other night? Miami could be that team on the other side that could play Clemson in an ACC championship game, and that Miami defense, man, that front four and those linebackers are flying around making plays. So I don't think it's as bad as everybody's saying. I'm just not going down that path. There's just Alabama and Clemson, and there's everybody else. I don't think we're there yet. I know they've looked great, but I think there's 6 or 7 or 8 other teams that are kind of positioning themselves to still be in this discussion of being worthy of being in the Final Four and maybe winning the national title.
I'm saying right now, I think Georgia and Alabama are going to meet in the title game, SEC title game, undefeated, and the question will be, will the loser still get into the top 4?
They both go.
Obviously, a lot of it depends on some of the other teams as well.
Can we just close the loop because we didn't go out west? How about out west? Who are we buying into in a big way out west? Because there's been a lot. Obviously, USC with the big loss this weekend. Washington State. Who are we buying into in a big way out west, Herbie?
I'm buying into Washington. I need to see more of Washington State just because their history is get up and pull off in a big upset and then the next week lose. So I need to see if they have staying power. And not to mention they're away from Pullman now for quite a few games. So I think Washington with Chris Peterson, that's a program you just know there's stability there. They run the football. The quarterback makes good decisions. Their defense is very physical. They've replaced a lot of guys in that secondary. And that was the one thing I wanted to see is could they run the ball with the offensive line and could they play defense the way they were a year ago? And so far the answer has been yes. So I think you have to give Washington an edge over everybody else out in the Pac-12 right now.
Once again, College Game Day this weekend in Fort Worth for West Virginia, TCU, and then Herbie and company will be doing
real quick.
Yeah.
The dilemma, which you love, you like this kind of stuff, is who's going to be left out. Because if Washington were to continue to win and be out there and they win the Pac-12 championship game, and the Big 12 all of a sudden, they've got some teams with Oklahoma and TCU and Oklahoma State, and we know about the SEC, we know about the Big 10, we know about Clemson and maybe a Miami. Who will be that team that potentially in that conference that could be left out? This could be the first time where, I guess maybe 2 or 3 years ago when TCU and Baylor were in discussion in the first year of the playoff in 2014 and Ohio State ended up going over both of them. That was somewhat of a controversy. But this could be a big year where you have all 5 conferences, Power 5, deserving of their champion being in, and then who will eventually be left out. That's for you, Greeny. You celebrate the baseball, enjoy that part of it.
It's not just me. That's called talk show heaven.
Yes, it
right?
is.
That's called the talk show host's dream scenario. And so, look, man, as we have more time, we'll get into that because you're right.
Sure.
If you wind up with these teams, they've got, I guess that first year, you're right. TCU and Baylor had a really legit gripe. I think a lot of people had a problem with Penn State getting left out last year.
Oh, yeah, it'll be fun to talk about.
Because they won it. We'll have plenty of this as we go. Herbie, thank you.
Thanks,
We'll talk to you next week.
Have a great week, guys.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance, Kirk Herbstreit and Company with another big week.
So here's the irony of one of the things he said, that the game they're going to be at doing game day, West Virginia TCU, is on FS1. So as he said, he's going to do the Michigan State game.
Yeah.
Somebody sent me a link yesterday. It was the entire game on YouTube. And it's amazing. He just said Michigan State. October 1999, I called the Michigan State game. Somebody sent me the entire game. Do you know who the coach was at Michigan State?
Was it Nick Saban?
Nick Saban. You know who the quarterback was at Michigan?
Don't tell me.
Tom Brady.
Oh, Brady.
It was Brady. I called that game. That was I don't know why the guy sent it to me, and I just started watching it.
It's a pretty good thing to have gotten.
Wow, that's a pretty. And then he just mentioned. So I just
how good
it up
was
again.
Brady?
Oh, Brady was. I mean, it's interesting. What I put up, I had keys for both quarterbacks, and what I put up for him was accuracy. You know, all the things you see now that's made him the greatest quarterback of all time as his strength. I had him up there, and the weakness I had mobility. So I mean,
you were right.
Yeah.
I mean, you were right all the way around.
It was Too Far Tuesday yesterday on Twitter. Did you and Booger give away a bobblehead?
We did not give away a bobblehead.
Come on.
We did. No, I don't want to do that without you. I mean, I need your guidance. But we do have bobbleheads obviously today, and we will. And we did have a lot of Too Far Tuesday stuff
good.
yesterday as well. Craig Hayden tweets at us, I hate the wild card one and done format. If you play 162 games to get in, you ought to get a 3-game series and 1 home game. Here's the problem with that is it's not about elongating the postseason. I would actually be in favor of shortening the regular season and elongating the postseason in one sport and one sport only, and baseball is that sport. The problem is, and if you were with us earlier, you heard Manfred said it yesterday with Waddle and Sylvia in Chicago. Yeah. The home team, so let's say you're Indians right now, they don't want to wait longer to play.
Right.
They don't want an extra, so many times in recent years, how many times have we seen these elongated waits between the end of the CS and the beginning of the World Series? And usually that's a negative. Usually the team that sits around and waits longer and gets cold, it works against them. If you gave the Indians the choice of taking, let's call it 2 days off to set their pitching up and then go, or get a full week off, they would take the 2 days.
Take 2 days. I'm with you.
So you would be doing the opposite of what you want to do. You'd be diminishing the advantage. So how do you do this? The only way to do it would be to add one more team to the playoff mix, make it 6 in each league, and then have everyone actually play a first series.
Yeah, first series, yeah.
And give the division winners some enormous advantage.
Right.
How would you do that? Maybe they only have to win 2 games and the other team has to win 3. Something like that, sort of a modification, if you will, of the Booger rules. And by the way, when we mentioned that this was Booger's idea, I immediately got a bunch of tweets saying that in some of the Asian baseball leagues, they do it that way.
Oh, they do?
Yes. I can't – maybe, Hembo, you can look into that. But I got a bunch of notes saying they do that because I do kind of like
I don't mind
idea.
that at all. I really don't. And again, Booger's to use Minnesota and the Yankees as an example, his way would have been Minnesota would have had to win twice and New York once. To move on. So it would have ended last night because the Yankees won, but if Minnesota won, they'd play one more game today where it would be winner take all.
So if you wanted to add one more, just for the sake of this discussion, all right, so in the American League, you would have the Astros, the Red Sox, and the Indians would have home field advantage. Then you would do like a snake draft. You would then take the next 3 teams in order. Instead of 2 wild cards, 3. They would play, worst against best and so on. And you would give the advantage to the home team. So in this case, you would have had the Royals and Rays and Angels all
yes,
tied.
all tied, yeah.
Somehow that's another problem.
That's another thing. Now you're
that.
playing a game to break that, and then you're pushing things even more.
But you couldn't do this without shortening the regular season. You would just be adding a layer of playoffs, which most sports have done, and you could live with it if you shortened the regular season. Would you do that? If you were the king of the world, and I said right now you can make that decision, you can add another layer of playoffs and shorten the regular season, would you do it?
To shorten to 154, to shorten 8 games, I would do it in a heartbeat. And I just saw the note up there. There have actually been more seasons of 154 games than 162 games. Yeah. I would go 8 games for sure.
How close is that to being even at this point? It's got to be getting close.
1961, I believe.
61? So that's from here now. That's 50 something years.
6 years?
Yeah. And how many years before that? So they've been playing the game for 130
Bottom line is
years.
You'd have to tell the owners they're not losing any money. Okay.
Well, I think in some ways they might make more money with an extra level of playoffs.
Let's just say that's the starting point.
Right.
Make sure you're not losing money. Okay, you're not losing money. Okay, go. Let's throw out some options.
I don't think it's a terrible idea. We'll bounce it off David Ross. He'll join us in studio in our next hour. Stay there. Busy day. Mike and Mike.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance